Hey guys, Josh here from the Sunshine Tribe. I hope you're all hanging in there. I hope you're doing well, and hopefully there's a bit of light at the end of the tunnel from where you're watching, from whatever corner of the world that you're watching this video. We're seeing a bit of light at the end of the tunnel down here in Australia, which is great. Hopefully something similar is happening in your corner of the world too. So last week we talked about the local market, and I thought it'd be good to expand on that because it's a pretty important subject right at this point in time. It's pretty widely accepted. It's going to be the local market that bounces back before anything else. Local market followed by the intrastate market, so people moving around your state if you have states in your destination, and then the interstate market, people moving around the country from one state to another before the international market bounces back. Pretty widely accepted. So we talked a lot about how you could gear your experiences to succeed in the local market. Now, just to recap a couple of things that we talked about last week. The first was about segments. So avoid at all costs creating in inverted commas, a local experience. So that's something that's geared to the local market in its entirety. Rather than do that, you really need to be looking at segmenting the market. So identifying segments within that local market that you think you can have some real success in, whether it's the mature age market or the student market, the international student market, whether it's the local business market, which I'll tell you about in a few minutes, the way that we succeeded in my business with that market. Other markets, it might be husbands and wives wanting to now escape the kids. It could be families as a whole who want to get out there and do something after being cooped up for so long. Whatever it is, there's a lot of segments within that local market, and you really need to be identifying segments that you think you can have get some traction with, have some success with. That's where you're going to succeed in selling a lot of your experiences into the local market by segmenting that market. So just before we move on, some people actually came back to me last week when I talked about these, and they said, yeah, I think you're right there. I think you've got it wrong there. The mature age market, we don't see that as a market with a lot of potential. They've lost a lot on the stock market. Or the student market, we don't see that as a lot of with a lot of potential because they've all lost their part-time jobs and they've got no money. So fair point and well taken. I would say that my view is that there's still plenty to go around. So yes, that would apply to some, but absolutely not all. These are big market segments. There's a lot to go around. So the fact that you might not get traction with some who are they've got a certain set of circumstances doesn't mean that the same is for all. So if you feel there's some opportunity within some of those segments, I do believe there's a lot to go around, and you should still dip your toe in the water and see if there's the potential there that you think there is. So moving along, I thought it'd be pretty useful to give you a bit of an insight into the way that we succeeded in translating what we'd done with our many international markets and having some success in a segment of the local market. So many of you would know this. In 2007, I started a company called Melbourne Private Tours, MPT. I built that up over the next 10 years and sold it in 2017. But that company was about 90% international. So the US market, UK, Europe, Singapore, Hong Kong, the Middle East, all really big, strong international markets. And 90% of our customers were inbound, 10% local initially. So in about 2011, about 4 years into business, I decided that I thought we should really try and have some success with a segment of the local market to boost sales in our slower months of the year. So for me, the segment that I identified was local businesses. Now, I didn't actually see it as a segment of the local market at the time. I saw it more as leisure and corporate. But in actual fact, what I was doing was identifying a segment of the local market, and I had a lot of success in that segment. So we grew over the next 3 years, MPT corporate events up to around $500,000 a year in revenue. So from what I didn't think we'd have that level of success, it's still going strong today, and I'm not sure how far they've taken it, but I'm hoping they've taken it very far. But that became a really key component of our overall business. So how did we do that? Well, we had a range of really high-end experiential private tours. Initially, so geared at the international market. Initially, I thought some of them would translate directly into the corporate market to local businesses as they were. I found that wasn't the case. They didn't really resonate. Things like our Mornington Peninsula chef-led journey or our Food Art and Laneways walking tour, I thought they would really hit the mark it turns out they didn't. And why? Well, we actually went out to that market and we spoke to them. We didn't continue to try to sell them and sell them and sell them. We just engaged with them and we talked with them and we did a lot of deep dive customer research. What were their pains, fears, challenges, frustrations? What were they doing right now with regards to their corporate spend? You know, the budget allocated to corporate entertaining. What had they done previously? Why had it or hadn't it worked? All of these kind of questions. And we learned some fascinating stuff about, you know, working with executive assistants and company owners, you know, sales and marketing managers, whoever was tasked with organizing corporate entertaining for their business. We learnt all about their frustrations, challenges, the concerns they had with the things that they were doing, you know, the fact that people were bored, they were stale, it had been done to death, but they were scared to get out of their comfort zone because they didn't know if it was going to be popular. They had all these different people telling them they wanted to do all these different kind of things. They didn't know what they could do that would appeal to the masses. They were worried that attendance rates would drop off. They wanted to get people out of their comfort zone and boost morale, but they were just scared that they might miss the mark. All these kind of things, and it was really fascinating stuff. We spent a lot of time speaking to these people before we actually repackaged, redesigned, and promoted a lot of the corporate offerings that we eventually put together. So when we actually finally got to the point of creating our corporate menu of experiences, we literally knew that they would sell because the people we wanted to sell them to had actually told us this is exactly what we want. So when they looked at it for the first time, they were like, yes, he's speaking directly to us. We knew what they wanted to pay. We knew how they wanted them to look. We knew the outcomes that they wanted from them, and it just worked beautifully. So I encourage you to really, really do the same rather than just assume that you can translate what you do into the local market or a segment of the local market. Speak to that market. Ask them about these challenges, pains, frustrations, fears. Ask them what they're wanting their experiences to look like, all these kind of things, so that when you actually go ahead and build it, create that, you know, minimum viable product that we talked about last week, you're almost guaranteed that it's going to sell. You know what they want, you know what they're prepared to pay, and you know what they want to get out of it. So I'd strongly encourage you to do just that. So I just wanted to leave you finally with a couple of pricing tips. A lot of people ask me a lot of the time about pricing and how local pricing should look in comparison to international pricing. There's a lot of myths around it. People think generally that they need to charge less for a local experience, and I would say that's absolutely not the case. I mean, that by doing that, you're literally just asking the marketplace what they believe a product should be worth. And I think you should never be guided by the marketplace so easily. Creating your prices based on what the marketplace believes a product should cost, I think is lazy, and I think it's where companies go that have possibly given up. What you should always be doing is building value into that product to create a unique value proposition, to do something that others aren't doing. People will pay. Local segments of the local market, they will absolutely pay for a solution to a problem, or to give them the pleasure that they're craving and they can't find elsewhere. They will absolutely do that. If you've got a unique value proposition, you can charge really, really well. So a good example of that is Starbucks. Actually, now they effectively rethought the experience around a cup of coffee. So before Starbucks, people generally paid 99 cents for a product. Starbucks were able to develop such a unique value proposition and charge $3 or $4 or $5 for what people had previously expected to pay $99 for. And the marketplace had, you know, the collective wisdom of the crowds had believed that was a 99-cent product. So, you know, if you've got that unique, people will pay if you're solving their problem, if you have a unique value proposition. And again, the second tip I've got for you goes back to segmenting your market. Now, if you create an experience that you think is geared to the local market, and let's say you price it at $95, you may find that sales stagnate. It just doesn't sell. Now, by going back And I'll give you a bit of a hypothetical to illustrate. So you got a company, they charge $95 for a product that they've created for the local market. It's not selling. They go back and they discover that in actual fact, there's two completely different segments of the local market that are interested in their product. You've got local businesses and you've got students, let's say hypothetically. Now they learned that the students, even though they love the offering, they're only willing to pay $65. That's just $95 is too expensive for them. Local businesses, they also really enjoy what it does speak to them, but at $95, they're a bit concerned it's a bit cheap and a bit tacky and not polished enough. So this company learns they've got two completely different segments of the market. One feel it's priced too high, the other feel it's not polished enough and it's priced too low. So they make the decision to focus all their energies, all their efforts on the local business segment of the local market. They increase their prices to $130 rather than $95, and all of a sudden sales go through the roof. So I would really, really stress that to you, to segment your market and to price accordingly based on a specific segment of the market. So I hope some of this has been really useful to you. We could go on and on about so many elements of gearing your products to the local market, but I hope you took something out of this today, and go get them.